I am Hamish, this is Stan, and this is Civil Banter. We are two associate lawyers at Nelligan Law practicing insurance, civil litigation, and all things injury. So we're going to get started with our first segment. It's audience favorite. It is LARPing, which is Lawyers Are Real People-ing. So Stan, how have you been filling your time? What have you been watching? What have you been doing outside of the practice of law?
Well, I got some festival passes to some of the upcoming music festivals in Ottawa for this summer. Big outdoor music fan, and got the Blues Fest pass. So that's always a great use of time. And
Good lineup?
great lineup. It usually is. Even if the headliners aren't necessarily your cup of tea, they have 4 other stages every night, and there's always good music to be had. And so long as the weather cooperates, it's a great time at a really nice venue. For those who haven't been, it's down by the War Museum. So you've got sort of Ottawa, Parliament Hill in the background. You've got a lot of stages. It's in July. The weather's usually fantastic.
Yeah, nice open air experience. And
Yeah.
I guess the question is, will the LRT be running to Le Breton this year?
It's a good question. Yeah. And how long the lineup is. I have to say, I park at the office and walk over. Usually it's not that far of a walk. So park at the office, walk over, enjoy that. I've also got passes for Escapade, which is
Season 2?
Season 2. For some reason, it was a really big deal to everybody at the office that I had Escapade tickets last year. They were like, "Oh my God, you're the last person I thought would go to an EDM festival." And you're probably right. My wife's really the EDM fan, and she bought passes for both of us. So I was one of the oldest, squarest for people there.
In that tracksuit?
Yeah, this is my Windsor Law tracksuit. Listeners won't be able to see. Viewers probably weren't able to see either, but it says Windsor Law on the back. We had these during law games, which was well over a decade ago. Now, lots of fun. It's too hot to wear this tracksuit to EDM festival, where some people are wearing almost nothing. So I was not one of those people, but I loosened up as the festival went on, and I legit had a great time, which is why I've got this year, season 2. Nice. More to report. I'll let you know. How about you, Hamish? What are you doing? What have you been up to?
I stopped by Altitude Rock Climbing Gym in Kanata.
Okay. That's awesome.
This previous weekend. Haven't been before. I went with a good friend and his son. I hadn't been in about 7 years. So
before that, had you been a rock climber at all, or was this sort of like once every 7 years?
No, I dabble. I dabbled over a long enough period so that I have climbing shoes and I have a harness.
Okay, yeah.
But I've never been outdoor climbing. I've only ever done rock climbing walls. I've done various rock climbing gyms in Ottawa, and then when I was in Kingston for law school, I went to the Boiler Room there, which is this really cool rock climbing gym in I think it's where an old the Kingston newspaper used to be produced out of. So it has a big like smokestack chimney.
Okay,
that's like 100 feet tall. And
that's cool.
Yeah. So Altitude in Kanata, I thought was really good. They have auto belaying, which I haven't used before.
Is that with the machine?
Yeah, it's essentially a pulley system, but it basically means instead of someone at the bottom who is also in a harness and in principle literally taking your weight if you fall off the wall and you fall the distance of whatever slack is in the rope. With the auto belay system, it's like a constant tension with some type of ratcheting device. So if you fall off the wall, you will safely...
One click of a gear.
Yeah, you'll descend.
Slow.
Yeah, you don't get caught in place. You will descend, but you'll descend slowly and comfortably.
Okay.
So it was really good. My flexibility is... I'd say I have the flexibility of a man double my age.
I feel that. You know what? Yoga studios, you want to sponsor us? Give us a free week. We'll take it.
But yeah, it was fun. It was fun doing something active, and finger muscles. You don't think about it, but you do have them in the day after rock climbing.
Sore, eh?
Yeah.
Oh. I had been rock climbing once in my life, outdoors actually.
Oh,
well,
wow.
I've been indoors a couple of times, but like outdoors once, not since grade 10. So a long time ago. But in Alberta on a school trip that went out to Canmore, and that was a lot of fun.
I hope there was a good wiper.
It must have been. I don't know. I was a minor at the time. Somebody else's problem.
And how are you with heights?
Not great, honestly. Yeah, not great. Like the mountain climbing part of that trip, but I feel like, first time in the CN Tower, a really tall building, a little nervous on heights. Not terrible. Like, I'll do it. I'm not so afraid that I won't go up them. How about you?
I'd say I'm average to like good average, just because I've been at least on climbing walls enough times, but they also they don't go that high.
Yeah.
It's like 30 feet. And then the one in Kingston, that's 100 feet.
That'd be pretty scary.
That's a bit more intense, but it adds to the overall experience too, because you're not just doing the physical, you're doing, the technical with the handholds and your foot positioning, but having the height element it's just part of it. It's fun.
Do you sort of mind over matter the fact that there's safety precautions there? So you're just like telling yourself, even if I let go, I'm fine. And that can kind of get you through.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if I had a better understanding of how the equipment worked too, because the auto belay system is something where it's like I got the principle, but I think I would have been less scared had I taken it down, examined it closely, figured out how it worked, and then be like, okay, I've satisfied myself that this is definitely going to work.
Yeah. Before we jump off this segment, what's your favorite concert you've been to?
Favorite concert? I'm tempted to say, so there's two. The first concert I ever went to was I saw The Who with my father.
That would have been a better question. Maybe we'll see. Yeah, first concert, The Who. That's awesome.
The Who with my father. Obviously, it's one of those things. I saw them in whatever, the stadium in Kanata was called at that time.
We would have been at the same show. I was at that show.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, obviously it's one of those things, do I wish I got to see them in their prime? Yes, but I would have had to be born a couple of decades earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the one that stands out because it was my first. I got a t-shirt. I still have the t-shirt. So yeah.
That's the one where Lenny Kravitz opened for them, was it? No, that was a different concert. He opened for Aerosmith. Who opened for The Who? I can't remember.
That's too hard of a test. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was at that show. That's awesome. All right, on to the reasonable Stan.
Okay, so in this segment, I went on Canly, the legal research database, and I clicked Ontario, and then I clicked Ontario Superior Court, and I searched general damages in quotations within 5 words of award. I filtered the decisions on the database by newest, and I've taken a series of the spiciest cases and most interesting cases I could find that are not so long as to drive us insane.
Right. Are you trying to trip me up when you find these cases?
No, I'm trying to play fair. I'm trying to stick to something that you could reasonably assess.
Okay.
And we have a scoring system, which is as follows. I read the facts of the case, or what I consider to be the relevant facts. Stan gets an opportunity to ask me questions about the case. Stan assesses general damages for pain and suffering, and then we'll find out how close to the general damage assessment of the judge and jury Stan got. And the scoring system is that the delta between Stan's assessment and the assessment of the judge and jury constitutes a debt that Stan then owes to me. So in the first reasonable Stan segment, Stan's assessment, the delta between the actual assessment and Stan's assessment was $45,000. The second reasonable Stan segment, his delta was only $5,000. So, still the debt is growing, but he's sort of...
I think it can only grow, right? Unless I nailed it.
Yeah, the debt's growing, but the bleed has slowed down. And so we'll see how close Stan can get in this segment. So for anyone who wants to follow along, the case is Ram Charan and State Farm Mutual Automobile Insurance Company, 2023 ONSC 3698. And in this action, the plaintiff brought an action for damages involving a collision in a parking lot while he was parked in a commercial parking lot reading some papers. The other vehicle left the scene and fled and was never found.
Hence the claim against, I presume, his own insurance company.
You got it. And so this was a jury trial, and the case I'm reading from is actually the threshold decision. So I don't have necessarily all of the facts. I have the facts as reported in the threshold decision.
So you have a jury verdict here.
A jury verdict.
Makes it harder.
It does make it harder. And so what also makes it harder is the plaintiff's pre-existing injury situation. So
this is the ultimate. Juries are unpredictable. We don't know what they're going to do. We could assess damages accordingly, but they could do anything. And we're about to find out what they did.
And so this was a 2010 accident. It's a bit hard to assess how old he was. I would say at the time of the accident, he was at minimum 34, based on my math and some references within that. At the time of the decision, he's at minimum 47, but he could be 2 decades older than that on either end.
Okay.
He's reviewing papers in his car. He struck on the driver's side rear corner while stationary. He had a pre-existing healed fracture in his right elbow.
Does it say how long ago that was?
Doesn't say how long ago that was. He was asymptomatic prior to this accident. And as a result of the collision in which his right elbow strikes the steering wheel, I guess if he's sort of reading, I'm not exactly sure on the mechanics, but his right elbow in his evidence strikes the steering wheel, okay, immediately becomes painful. The evidence at trial is the treatment he received. This is a little interesting. I've just never heard of this. Laser acupuncture over a 2-year period.
Okay. I haven't heard of that either.
Yeah. So that's something to look into after this. But laser acupuncture, 2 years without significant relief. His pre-medical history is also he was HIV positive, but it sounds like that was generally under control.
I don't know how that would factor into an elbow pain situation, but okay.
Well, the defendant will pounce on any pre-accident medical history, as you all know, Stan.
Yes.
He went to an upper extremity orthopedic surgeon at Sunnybrook. The doctor did an X-ray and MRI, or the doctor requisitioned an X-ray, an MRI, and a CT scan, all post-accident, and basically confirmed that his right elbow was posing some issues and offered to perform a surgery. And the surgery was anticipated to not restore the elbow to normal, but to regain about 75 to 80% chance of reducing discomfort. He's right-hand dominant, so he has the surgery. The expectation was it was going to be a 3-month recovery, and the surgery involved removal of tissue and the radial head of a bone at the elbow, and then the reattachment of various ligaments to the bone. And
sorry, they did all those scans. There was not like a clear elbow fracture. I didn't think I heard that.
Well, this is the thing. He had a fracture certainly before this accident.
Right.
He had impairments after this accident that he attributes to the elbow strike, and he was at least asymptomatic before the car accident. Mm-hmm. And then it's not exactly clear whether or not he had a fracture that resulted from this accident. But given his symptomology, it was established that he could have a surgery that would at least help his ongoing symptoms of pain and discomfort in his elbow.
So something was wrong.
Something was wrong.
To the point that surgery was required and performed.
And now, essentially a year after the surgery, a little less than a year, he has good range of motion in his right arm, but he has ongoing weakness. And then he's unfortunately involved in another motor vehicle accident in which he aggravated his elbow injury again and then suffered soft tissue injuries to his neck, back, right shoulder. At the time of trial, it's basically a pain, discomfort, and weakness in his right arm, which is his dominant hand. He hadn't worked for some time, and his career was as, it's just described as a meat cutter, which just seems like a very crude way of describing his profession.
Like, could have said a butcher, no?
In a later place, it describes him as a butcher, but anyway, the first reference is meat cutter.
Maybe that's it, like a large-scale meat processing as opposed to your local friendly butcher.
And it sounds nasty in terms of obviously multiple
surgeries.
Not multiple surgeries, but just multiple incidents that have afflicted the same body part again.
It's a bit cruel, right? 3 times, previous incident, car accident, subsequent car accident.
Yeah, which is, I would say,
it's tough.
It's not uncommon that there are intervening factors, and that if you have an injury, especially something like an orthopedic injury, that it's a point of vulnerability. So by the time of trial, his main complaint is reduced strength and ability to grip with his dominant hand. And I'll give you the spoiler on the threshold decision, which is whether or not he has a permanent and serious impairment of an important bodily, in this case, function. Yes, he meets threshold.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
So he was working. He did not go back to work?
He did not go back to work, and but it's not clear that that's really related to this injury. He went on ODSP for a period pre-injury, citing his HIV status. By the time he's at trial, he basically said he felt like he could go back to work part-time as a meat cutter.
In a pretty physically demanding job for an elbow.
And he'd search for a job after this accident, but without success.
Okay. Anything about his social, recreational activities, things of that nature?
Undoubtedly at trial, but not a focal point in the threshold decision.
Okay. Well, he is threshold. Thank you for that. Honestly, it sounds like it would have been kind of close. I would have given it to him too, because he's still dealing with this, not working. It's 13, 14 years later that there's still direct impact on his employment. Seems like surgery was required and there's lingering effects there. I am going to, this is pretty limited information. I'm giving, yeah. I hope I'm giving some wide latitude.
It's harder as I'm reading it out.
Yeah. I'm like, there's not a lot to go on. I don't know, 60 grand?
$62,250 for general damages.
Even closer than last week.
Well done. You're really narrowing the gap at this point.
Yeah.
And so in a later episode, we will get into deductibles because he got hit by a deductible.
Yeah, he would have netted like 20 grand on that. Thereabouts.
17,800.
Yeah. Yikes.
So as I said, we'll go into deductibles and the specifics of how that works in car accident cases in a later episode. But for the purpose of the reasonable Stan, you were exceedingly close.
Wow. I'm very pleased with that. Self-servingly, very pleased.
And in our next segment, we're going to be moving on to 5 Under 5.
New segment, yes. This is kind of close to the LARPing segment, but we think it's we're 5 episodes in here. Time to learn a little bit more about what we bring to the table and what's sort of fun and bring some levity to the whole thing. So maybe I'll start and we'll bounce it off each other here. What was your favorite law school class? I'm
going to go with 2.
But you can't. You got to pick one.
Okay, I'll go with the more niche one, which is principles of financial regulation. which
viewers couldn't see, but I shook my head. Or viewers could see, listeners couldn't see. I shook my head at that one.
It was picking up in some of the comments I made in our last episode about my argumentative roommate that I had who would always school me on anything to do with business and finance.
You were perfect for insurance law. You really were.
When I went to law school, I was like, I'm going to get that guy back. So I took Principles of Financial Regulation. It was not a full year class. It was taught by a sessional instructor that came over working on his PhD for it was either Oxford or Cambridge. And it was not a hard law class in terms of it was not specific law as it applies in Ontario for the purpose of prosecuting cases. It was a more top level, these are the considerations in terms of, touched on securities law. We talked about stuff like collateralized debt obligations.
Wow.
And credit rating agencies and other juicy topics that came up.
How long was this?
I think it would have been like 12 weeks or something like that. Like it was a shorter class.
How many people were in this class?
There would have been so I know this, there were enough people that they still curved it. They still graded you on a curve, because at Queen's there was a situation where if there were fewer than a certain amount of people, they wouldn't grade it on the curve. So there was enough that they still graded it on a curve. I think it was like 22 people or something.
Okay.
And everyone else was basically checked out and were regretting taking the class.
That would have been me, for sure.
And I was being exceedingly keen, and I got the class prize.
I'm proud of you. That's good.
I think it was basically just because everyone else just was like, why did I take this class?
You were built for success there. Yeah. Favorite Formula One driver?
It's tough. At present, I'm going to say George Russell.
Very English.
Mercedes driver. Had a challenging career at Williams to begin with and grinded away in a slow car and dragging it into positions that didn't deserve to be in.
Mm-hmm.
He's also very tactical and strategic when it also comes to sort of the off-track stuff in terms of how he frames incidents that have happened on track.
You see a bit of lawyer in him.
Yeah, there's definitely a political advocacy and shaping the narrative.
He's the head of the drivers union, right?
He is, which is also cool. And again, that's definitely essentially a political appointment. So I like his on-track driving prowess and also his off-track strategic maneuvering.
All right. Question 3, favorite Ottawa restaurant?
It has to be Aroma Meze, which is a Greek tapas restaurant. It's either on Nepean or Gloucester. And it's a small family-owned restaurant that looks like a Santatown house.
Yeah.
And it just has, the menu changes decently often, and it's all sharing plates, and it's all interesting stuff like, Greek octopus and
love it.
Obviously classics like Spanakopita and stuff with dates. And
I can't believe I haven't been there. I'm married to a Greek. We should go.
You should absolutely go. It's incredible.
Excellent. Love it. What is your favorite courthouse?
It has to be Brockville.
You've got the memories of a successful, quasi-successful trial, successful appeal originating from the Brockville courthouse. Carry on.
Originating that, unfortunately, we did it virtually. So,
oh, right.
Yeah, okay. It was a virtual trial, but it was originating in Brockville, and it's just a lovely historic old courthouse. Brockville's just a pretty town if you've never been. It's small, but it's got a main street by the waterfront, and there's kind of like a sort of town square around the courthouse. It's just like a lovely old cozy.
Yeah, I think they shoot a lot of Hallmark Christmas movies there now.
That is a thing, and I can totally see why. And just the courthouse there is just, it's right in that mix between sort of grand and important, but also kind of just cozy.
I love that we get the whole range of experiences here in Ontario, from large, sort of dull courthouses to the smaller centers that are really old, wonderful buildings, and everything in between. So that's great. And the last under five question for you: your favorite drink?
I'm going to split the difference here. I'm going to go soft and hard.
I'll allow it.
It's kind of the same answer, which is soft drink, Fresca.
Cool.
Grapefruit, 0-calorie soda. What's interesting about it is it's not Fresca Zero. It's not Diet Fresca. It's just Fresca.
Right. That the one and only.
Yeah. And then for hard drink, we're moving into spring. We'll then be moving into summer. How about a Paloma?
Great drink of the summer.
So tequila and grapefruit soda. You can make it more fancy, I suppose, if you put real grapefruit juice in. You do a sugar, or I think classically sugar, but also you could do a salt rim, tequila. And did I say tequila twice?
You did. Maybe they're doubles. Nobody can say no to that.
But if you want to go, cheap, simple, effective, you can just do tequila and Fresca.
Yeah, you can do one of those, as fancy or as fun as you want. Awesome.
Okay, Stan, 5 under 5. What was your favorite law school class?
Civil trial advocacy. So we ran a mock trial in that class, learned about examining witnesses. That's what gave me the bug to do civil litigation in practice. I loved it. It was fun. It was practical. It got a competitive juices flowing in me on winning that case. We did, my partner and I on that one, who was my roommate in law school, he and I, we won our case. So stacked the jury, though, with our friends. So I don't know if that counts.
And was it taught by a practitioner or a professor?
Several practitioners.
Okay.
So there were, I think, 5 or 6 different practitioners, and they came in and, showed us, frankly, how they did their cross exams in chief, and we practiced different things every week and really learned that practical aspect, which is rare in law school anyway, to get that practical experience and remove the theoretical. And kind of, it was a third-year course, so you spend 2.5 years learning about the theory of law, and then you get to put it into practice, and I loved it.
Good stuff. Favorite Formula One driver?
Max Verstappen. I know it's evil. He's the Galactic Empire. He's Darth Vader. He's all those things. But I just respect the hell out of the skill set. Honestly, it's just like you can see the gap between him and anyone else who drives for Red Bull, that he is, head and shoulders above them. The ruthlessness of early career Max was awesome. I loved it.
What about the toll he takes on his teammates?
I think he doesn't care. Does he? Should he care? I don't know. He's in it to win, and maybe he should care a little bit more, but I don't think he can change the way he drives. I don't think he's overtly mean to them. Maybe he is at times.
I think it's just the pressure of going up against, perhaps the greatest of his generation.
I think all of the true greats at what they do, no matter the sport, are going to be a little bit of a challenge for either teammates or obviously opponents, and that just comes with the territory. That's what I think.
We have a different approach in law.
Yeah. I think maybe, but I just...
We haven't done a trial together yet, but hopefully I don't get my career derailed immediately after.
I don't think I'm like that necessarily, which is maybe, you kind of not look up to, but like appreciate somebody with a different kind of approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I can appreciate what it would take to be that ruthless all the time.
Okay, moving on to favorite Ottawa restaurant.
It's not quite a restaurant. They do serve food there. Great food. Adam's the chef at this place. But I love Stolen Goods Cocktail Bar. The quality of the cocktails are incredible. For my money, the best you can get pretty much anywhere. remarkable. They do all kinds of really interesting stuff, and they do it so well. Small bar, small restaurant, and it's a really intimate feel when you're in there. I know the guys who run it, and it's just awesome.
I think you've mentioned it before. Where is it?
It's on Spark Street, just near Metcalf.
Okay.
And they're open late. That's kind of their thing. But you can go there from 6 till 2. And I think they're closed Monday, Tuesday, but any other day of the week. And if you want the best cocktails in Ottawa, that's the place to get it.
That's a strong endorsement. What courthouse would you endorse as being your favorite?
Really strange from somebody practicing in Ottawa, but I was lucky enough to be on a 2-week trial in Welland, Ontario. Old school courthouse, similar to Brockville. Paintings on the wall, portraits on the wall, windows, which is so rare on some of the courthouses to have windows. Good memories from that trial. Great environment to be in. Kind of has that like My Cousin Vinny feel of smaller town courthouse. Really great. Everybody involved in that was really wonderful to deal with. Good staff and great. Loved it.
And favorite drink?
For a hard drink like a cocktail, we've been talking cocktails this episode. I love a classic Negroni. You can riff on it in many different ways, but just a classic Negroni, it can be used before dinner, after dinner.
Yeah, it can be used.
Used to enhance your culinary experience. I love them. They're really great.
Definitely an acquired taste.
Yeah, if you don't like bitter, or it takes some getting used to, you may not like them. But once you take that dive, there's no coming back. And there's a lot of, like I said, riffs you can pull on a Negroni. So
and then soft drink.
Not really a huge soft drink guy. I don't know, Coke Zero maybe, or whatever suits the need. So I not pop, but like coffee, water.
Staples.
Staples, yeah.
Okay, so moving on to our next segment, which is one thing to rule them all. And in this segment, we discuss a rule of civil procedure, a legal practice issue, or a legal bone that we have to pick. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing virtual hearings versus in-person hearings, the pros, the cons, the future, and some of the impacts those have had on both of our careers and kind of how we've approached law, and also some of the changes that we've seen since 2020.
Yeah, post-pandemic, big shift. Well, during the pandemic and carrying on afterwards, big shift from what was always a presumption of being in person to now doing things virtually. And as Hamish said, there's a lot of pros and cons, and no right answer maybe on whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. We both practiced before the pandemic, and the biggest thing that jumps out is just the sheer time saving in getting to these court appearances or discoveries or what have you, mediations. Many times I would head up to places like North Bay or Sudbury, and you're either flying through Toronto or you're driving 5 hours one way, sometimes to do a 1 hour discovery, or a 1 hour motion.
First examination, and this is, an examination for discovery is technically not, it's not an in-court proceeding, but for whatever reason, doing things in person was the standard for every element of litigation.
Every part of it, from the discoveries to the mediations to the pre-trial conferences to trial. It was just assumed that you would go in person to wherever that person lived, and examine them, and have a mediation.
Yeah, and the first examination for discovery I did was in Thunder Bay.
So long way. I take it you flew?
Yeah, it was 2 flights to get there. Yeah. And from where we are today in the world we're in today, it's just there's no question we would have done it virtually by Zoom.
Yeah, you get some benefits, of course, from seeing somebody in person. Body language is beyond their head. I don't know, like really, does that make that much of a difference? I don't know if it does. I think it would be nice, but is it required? If you weigh the cost and the time and all of the things that went into doing a trip like that for 2 or 3 hours of work, it just simply doesn't make sense. So that's a big plus. I think that's like no doubt about it, a plus.
Yeah, exactly. I think in terms of just a couple of things, the benefit to the clients in terms of it being cheaper, fewer disbursements, fewer travel costs, less wasted time, to be honest, because when you join the Zoom call, you are on, and then when you close it, you are off. There's not that waiting around, traveling to, et cetera, et cetera. There's efficiency, and then there's also, there is the access to justice element of, for someone who's self-represented, it's a significantly lower barrier to entry to join a Zoom call.
Correct. Or they can hire any lawyer they want who's licensed to practice in the province of Ontario, regardless of location, knowing that they can do most of the work virtually.
Right. And that's the thing too, in terms of the types of files we work on, we're based in Ottawa. We're licensed to practice in Ontario. From time to time, we can practice outside of Ontario too. But generally speaking, if we're talking Ontario, we can represent clients in any jurisdiction within Ontario. It doesn't matter where the courthouse is. There's, not to say that there's no learning curve. There are some, practice directions and procedural specifics that impact some courtrooms, some court regions versus others.
For sure. And in cases with the jury, I would think you would want a local lawyer, or at least somebody who does a lot of practice in that area, to know what the makeup of a jury might be like.
Right. But yeah, definitely, that element of being able to represent clients in different regions, and then by the same token, a client being able to go with the lawyer of their choice regardless of the geographic confines is certainly a plus. But let's move on to some of the downsides.
Yeah. So some of the ones that jump out to me is that there's just a fewer opportunities to observe other people doing law, especially for younger lawyers, although I think anybody can learn at any time, and I welcome every opportunity I have to observe somebody in action. But if you're, the old days, let's maybe preface this, some of our listeners might not really understand how it used to work. If you had a motion, which is not a trial, but it's something in between starting your action and the conclusion of the action, where you're asking the court to do something. You're saying, court, I need you to force the other party to do this, or give me this relief. So you'd have a motion, and you'd show up at the courthouse, and there'd be a list of other people with motions as well. Same day, same judge, same courtroom. You might be number 5 on that list of people who have a motion. If you're number 5, you would either go outside in the hall and wait and chat with your friend or do some work on another file. Or what I did is you'd sit in the courtroom and watch the other 4 motions go ahead of you, and you'd see what kind of questions the judge was asking and how counsel were responding and the way that they would deliver their remarks and what worked and what didn't. And
you'd also fundamentally just potentially learn something you didn't know about how a rule operated, how a case was decided, or how some law applied to some facts. So you'd be having the benefit in terms of, continuing professional development by both learning the law as 2 sides or one side are relating it, but then also learning how it's put into practice by watching where they did well, watching where they stumbled.
Absolutely.
Learning courtroom decorum.
That's big. And usually, not always, judge can always decide which motion he wants to hear, or she might want to hear first. But typically, the more senior lawyers would go first, other than the really express quick motions. Those would always go first on consent. You're in, you're out. You wouldn't maybe learn too much from that. But the contentious ones, typically the more senior lawyers would begin. They're the most expensive. They cost the most. Get them in and out there as fast as they can. And it's a great chance for younger calls to watch somebody who's been at it for 20 years argue a motion. Tremendous learning experience. But now, well, what happens now?
You're in a virtual waiting room and you get called in for your time slot and then you leave.
Right. So you don't, I suppose if you asked, maybe you could sit and watch, but that hasn't been my experience. It's been exactly yours. You wait in this room where you stare at a blank screen until you're called.
Right. And also you just, if you're at the courthouse waiting for your slot, observing, then that's just part of the process. But I feel like you'd have to be very intentional about if you're watching because you can choose to watch, that really is just your time. That's not client time. That is you're going out of your way to just do some learning on the side. I'd kind of encourage people to do it, but I don't think it's the same. And we all have other files we need to be working on. So it's harder to justify.
Yeah.
And then I think part of it too is in terms of the actual arguing of emotion in person, you don't have that opportunity. And I don't think it's quite the same in terms of you speak with, you probably speak with a lawyer before you go into the courtroom on the other side of the motion.
Totally. You'd say hi to them in the hallway. You chat about last second things that you might have come up or areas of agreement, honestly, that you can narrow things down and make the submissions a lot shorter and make the whole process a lot smoother. And that's something that we've, I think, lost as well, is the ability to, it's different. I think it's different if you're face to face with somebody in the hallway outside of the courtroom. You're probably going to be able to find some agreement on some things and maybe everything that you came there to sort out. And it's totally more, I think it's not intentionally adversarial, but it is more adversarial if you don't talk to each other and you're just on a screen.
It's just easier to not go that extra step where you're forced together at the doorsteps of the courthouse or at the entrance of the courtroom. And by the same token, if it's a situation where a judge really sees a way that this should be resolved without the need for a decision, if the judge tells counsel essentially, go out to the hallway and figure this out and come back to me with a consent position or an order that you will both agree to, I think that tool is more effective in person and being sent outside the courtroom to speak with the other lawyer in the hall, knowing that there is a judge behind that door that is waiting for you to come back. And they've, really articulated that this is not one that they're going to want to decide. There's risk and it could end up very badly for one side or the other. I think that is just, I don't think it's as common when you're doing a virtual proceeding. I think you sign onto Zoom, you say your bit, we see where the cards land.
Yeah. I think we've seen the more contentious motions, certainly summary judgment motions and things like that, have moved back in person. Some of the less contentious, easier motions have remained virtual. And maybe that's the right sort of compromise to make on these. That's something to consider. I think it's tough, this virtual world, for younger calls, newer lawyers who aren't getting those experiences of watching. And then if you ask them to come along to watch something somebody else at your office is doing, they're doing it for free because you can't charge your client to have somebody just watching how it goes down. And, that's important. People should do that, honestly, even if it means throwing a day of billables out the door. The career benefits outweigh the short-term financial hit that you might take. But I think it's really hard. And you and I both did the express motions thing, which I think might be uniquely Ottawa. But I think we both benefited from being in that room and seeing everything that happened. Maybe you can explain what that was like.
Yeah, the pressure of, you go in, you're an articling student potentially.
That was or a very young lawyer.
Yeah, junior lawyer or articling student, you've been tasked with the motion. You probably haven't done many steps on the file as a whole. And it's either a consent, meaning everyone's agreeing it needs to be done, but you need a judicial officer to sign off on it, or it's unopposed because for some reason you can't locate the person who you would otherwise be serving.
Motion for substitute service.
Yeah. Or something that's just a relatively simple motion, a short, simple motion. But you go in, and again, when you're doing an express motion, everyone around you, they're all essentially in the same boat, generally speaking. They're all likely to be articling students, other junior lawyers. And
it's a real room of peers.
It's a room of peers, and it's probably the first proper oral advocacy you've done, and there's pressure.
Yeah, I have to say I felt more pressure from the room than I did from the judge or associate justice, or that case back in that day, the master hearing the motion. I knew I'd get some leniency from them within reason. Obviously, they would be justifiably hard, I think, if you didn't put enough time into your materials or something. But I knew, the judge knows you're new at this, so they're going to cut you some slack. But the other people in the room, you're going to be your fellow members of the bar for the rest of your career, and you want to set that standard high. So I felt more pressure from them than anyone else.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think it's it's good pressure. It's exciting.
Yes.
It's fun.
I don't think it's toxic pressure. I think it's really, like you said, good pressure, healthy. Yeah. In reality, no one's really going to think less of you if you stumbled over your words or had the wrong rules or something. They would probably go, "Oh man, that could have been me."
Right.
Right. Like it's funny, the impression that I have of other people's view of me is not what I would like. I'm not going to hold them to that standard, but I would think they are of me. So.
And then also, you make them, if you're in that environment and you make the mistake once, I think you learn so much from that and you don't make the same mistake again. And I just don't know if it's quite the same if you're doing a virtual motion where you sign on, say your bit, sign off.
No one else sees you.
No one else sees you. You don't watch anyone else. I just don't think it's just not the same.
Have we resolved that in-person express motions court should return?
Be it resolved.
I say yes.
Anyway, more to come on this topic. I think it would be a good thing to speak with, different members of the bar about, whether it's veterans who've been practicing for a long time and have, a lot more experience in the pre-pandemic, pre-virtual world, and then how they've seen the changes and what they feel about them, but also, some young lawyers and articling students and what their experience has been throughout this process.
Yeah.
Coming to terms with virtual proceedings being the norm.
For sure. I will say this. I love an in-person mediation. I really, really don't like the virtual mediations. I don't think that they have the same success rate. In my practice, have noticed a lower success rate on virtual versus in person. And I think if you've got a substantial claim, you're only going to have one mediation. Like, go to the lengths of showing up in person and committing to a day of sitting across the table from the other decision makers and getting it done. Same with pre-trials. I know that they're proceeding for the most part virtually in Ottawa. I've had a few where they weren't successful, and then the judge hearing it has ordered, you're going to come back next week and we're all going to sit across a real table here and talk. So I think those kinds of opportunities for settlement, they're quite rare sometimes, and we really should just dedicate the resources to getting them across the goal line.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's something that we haven't quite figured out exactly yet. I think there's still work to be done, and while we have guidelines and while everyone has their own practice, I still don't know if we've, as a bar, come up with like the solution yet.
Yeah, case by case. It depends.
It depends.
We should get an "it depends" button, like that Staples button. What was it? The red one, you'd hit it.
Yeah.
I forget what it said.
Moving on to our next segment. This is shout outs. And in this segment, Stan, you can shout out a person, thing, news, tidbit, or event.
I'll start. Yeah, I'm going to shout out our colleague Kendra. She's a first-year lawyer, and she's working with me on a couple of really challenging power of attorney disputes. So something we haven't chatted about yet on this podcast, but we do estate litigation, which includes those who are living, powers of attorney fights. And these can be really challenging cases with a lot of emotion, and it's akin to family law, which I have never practiced in and don't want to be involved in. But the challenges, I think, in terms of intra-family disputes, family disputes, it's really hard sometimes. And so Kendra's been great. And most recently, her and I were involved in a mediation that was 13 hours long, consecutive 13 hours straight mediation. Started at 10 a.m. and ended at 11 p.m. And Kendra was awesome that whole time. Kept a great upbeat attitude that I think everybody benefited from, client and opposing party alike. And we reached a resolution on that, which we're all grateful for having done, in no small part to her. So shout out Kendra.
I'd like to shout out, this is an odd one, but the Sun Life Financial Center. So this is the
office building.
This is the office building in which we work.
And I love this shout out. I'm going to riff off this. I love it.
So Nelligan Law's offices are in the Sun Life Financial Center. In the bottom floor, we have Ollie Fresco's, which is a great, freshly made. There's a salad bar. There's hot food.
They have everything.
They have everything.
Everything you could conceivably eat.
It's all very reasonably priced. It's all fresh. It's all made daily.
Yeah.
What's the time? After what time do they give you like the discounts? It's something like
Fridays after 3 or 2.
And the compelling discounts.
50%.
Yeah, it's great. And also walking by there, it's all kind of open plan, and just the aromas you get walking by there, excellent.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then we also have Queen Street Fair, which has, I'm blanking on the names, but there's a great,
there's a pizza joint. There's a great coffee spot.
Thai, is it?
Yeah.
Thai or
yeah,
Vietnamese?
Pad Thai.
Yeah.
There's
there's a
Green
place
Rebels
that was really
there
good.
as well. Sort of salads and sandwiches.
And then there's the bar there,
Bar
which is
is
also
the selling
good.
point, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, and they also host events too. It's not something that we've been to as a firm, but I know that they host events in the evening in the same place.
And that's where a lot of our post-work drinks going over decisions happen at Queen Street Fair.
Whether or not we appeal a decision.
Right. That was a Q-bar decision.
And then we're also, the building I guess this isn't the building's credit, but there's a Good Life right next door. And then more recently than that, a Planet Fitness opened, which I understand you're a member of.
I mean, the price cannot be beat. I'm not here to push Planet Fitness on anybody, but it's the fact that it's in the building that I work in, and it is $15 a month. That's why I jumped on it. And so, yeah, I go there.
And then the LRT, which everyone who lives in Ottawa likes to rib and being like, oh, like it never runs. It's when it stops whenever there's freezing rain, but it comes right into the building.
Yeah, and I don't take it. You do take it. I don't that often, but it seems to me that it's better. The few times I take it, it's come when it says it was going to. It took me where I wanted to go, and I have no complaints about that.
Yeah, I'd agree. I take it essentially every day, and while it could in principle be better at sort of holding up to the harshest of Ottawa weather conditions, as a rule, it does its job. It's on time. They're frequent enough. It's pleasant enough. Good stuff comes into the building.
Yeah, this building's as good as any building I've worked in, and I've worked downtown Toronto for several years, and this building beats that one. It's got everything, and a big glass atrium, so you get a lot of light.
And a good Christmas tree over the holidays.
Great Christmas tree.
So with that, we'll say our goodbyes. You can find our team at nelliganlaw.ca. You can also find me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/hmillsmcewen.
You can find me same place, linkedin.com/in/Stanford Cummings.
We have our email address up and running. So if you have a comment, a suggestion, you want to be potentially a guest on the podcast, you can send us an email at civilbanter@nelliganlaw.ca.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Okay, that's a wrap.